Go ahead.
My husband and my son got their boat swamped, and it sunk in Sam Rayburn Lake. And just lucky enough that they could get to a tree that only had one limb on it, and Jack put Anthony, my son, on that tree, and he had his life jacket on, and the life jacket was between him and the tree. And Jack's life jacket was in the boat, and all the fishing gear went down with the boat and everything. And they were going across from Townsend Park to Castlebarkin Park. And when they went around, the lake was calm and everything when they left the lake, Townsend Park. And when they went around that point at Jackson Hill, the waves were so high that it just overflowed them. And so they stayed out there on that tree all night. They was going to go over to where his brother was camped. And so me and Emily, if she hadn't have come home with Anthony that night, I'd have been out in the boat with them and nobody would have known where we were. But her and Anthony caught bait while me and Jack checked the lines at Townsend Park, and then him and Anthony went on down the lake and checking lines that way, and me and Emily was going to bring the trailer around to his brother's camp, and so when I got to 1277 out of the park road, the lightning was just coming straight down, and I knew then we was in trouble, and because it was a long way across where they was going. And when I went to the long bridge, I could see the road, so there's waves, swirls. It was coming up out of the southwest, southeast. It coming towards the dam, and it was coming up and going under the bridge, and I knew they were out there somewhere, and I looked and couldn't find them. I went on over to Castlebarkin and stood up on a table and looked to see if I could see them, and I couldn't see them anywhere and everything. So I came back, across the lake, across the long bridge on 147, and I went up and down every road that went off 147 to the lake to see if they had come that way, got out on this side, but I could never find them. And I called the sheriff's office and the game wardens and whatever, and they came, and we all met up at Townsend Park, and they went out looking, and they wouldn't let anybody in a fiberglass boat go out there because the waves by then was bad up there at Townsend, and you had to have a aluminum boat. And so they have a rescue boat for St. Augustine County, and they was in it and all, and so that was when everybody had phones in your car or whatever, walkie-talkies.
Bag phones, CBs.
Yeah, and I could hear somebody saying, this is whatever Thomas called himself. I think he said, like, lowboy or something or other, and said, I'm heading in, and I was telling him, don't go in, come on up to Townsend Park. And but he didn't even know anything about it. He'd been to a union meeting in Lufkin, and when he come across 103 Bridge, he heard it on his scanner thing he had in his truck, and so he came on down to where we were and everything. So it was lots of people come to help and everything, but they would only let them if they had a nice, good aluminum boat to go out there because of the waves and everything was so high. So the next morning, well, they built a big fire in the middle of the park boat ramp. The next morning, my brother-in-law, my sister and my brother-in-law came, and they was going to go out and look, and I said, I want to go. So I took a thermos bottle of coffee and a warm blanket, a good blanket to wrap them up in, because I knew they'd be wet. But I said, so Lester wanted to go to the other side of the lake, like if the boat washed up on Nacogdoches side, well, we would find boats and gas cans and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't find ours. It was a 14-foot aluminum boat, and but when I kept telling Lester, I said, let's go down the boat lane, because that's the way he went. Well, let's look over here and look over there, and so anyway, we got on down further and still didn't find them. And I kept watching back up toward the park, and I saw my son-in-law and my brother-in-law, Buck and Paul, in Wallace's red boat, and Paul was standing up just waving. I told Lester, I said, let's go. They found at least one of them. And so we went on. He said, come on to the park. And said they found them. They're going to go through and they'll meet you at the park. So we went on up there, and Nancy come down and was going to help me up the slicky. It had rained all night long, and it washed Jack's cigarettes out of his pocket. He kept his billfold pushed down in his pocket, and he hung on to one little knot on a tree, and he had red wing boots on, and they have a little red dot in the bottom of them, and it wore them knots out of that boot, if you know what that is. And he pulled Anthony's hair and asked him if he's married and all that kind of stuff, but he was in the same tree, and it washed his cigarettes out. And Anthony was down below him, but at least he was on a limb, and the waves was coming to Anthony's back, and that's, if they'd have been coming the other way, he couldn't have held on, but it was pushing him against a tree. So anyway, when I got there, well, Nancy was going to come help me up and so I just pushed her out of the way, and I told her, just let me be where I could see Jack standing up there beside the fire they had built, and I couldn't see Anthony, and so I kept saying, "Where's Anthony? Where's Anthony?" And they finally got it through to me that he was in Billy Tim's car, the deputy sheriff.
Yeah.
And so I went on up there where he was, and I wanted to get him out and put him in my car and take him home with me, you know. And he said, "No, somebody can bring your car. You and Jack get in my car." And said, "I'll take y'all home." So Laurie, my sister, brought my car onto the house, and I didn't cry till after I got to the house. And when I got to the house and he was in the house, I broke down and started crying for the first time. That night that they was in the lake, when they said they was going to quit looking that night, and it was so bad. Well, I walked down to the edge of the lake and was just praying, and I kind of cried a little bit, and Nancy and I believe it was Laurie come down there, and I just dried up like nothing had happened. And so I came on back up there, and we stayed out in the rain all night waiting on finding them. But they took them by Dr. Garrison's office, and no, let me back up a little bit. They was hanging on this tree, and then when it got a little bit of daylight, they could see everybody out looking for them. That night they could see lights, but they couldn't get out to them because they was out in the middle of the lake. And the next morning, it was two fishermen from Houston came into Jackson Hill, and so Jack told Anthony, said, "Now's the time for us to holler," when those men got in their boat and before they got it cranked up. And everybody knew there was two people lost on the lake, so they started hollering and everything. And these guys got out of their little boat that they was fixing to get in and got into a bigger boat and came out there. Said you could tell when they heard them because they just stopped and listened and kind of figured out where they were, and said then they just cranked up and come on out there to them. And said he told them, said, "Get that boy in," said, "I'll be all right." And they helped Anthony in, and they was going to help Jack in, but he wouldn't let them. He thought, "Yeah, I'm okay," after being squatted down on that knot on that tree all night. Well, he said he just fell over in that boat, and said it was just like he was just like a frog. His legs wouldn't hardly work. And so they went on by Dr. Garrison's, and he gave them shots. But we never knew who those two people were that came and got them. We always wondered who they were and everything, but we never knew who they were. I just thank God that they were there to find them. And but anyway, Anthony was all right after he got home, but Jack broke out in big whelps. I'm sure it was nerves as well as anything else, but he just broke, and he had to go back again and get another shot to counteract that one or whatever. But anyway, Lillian Jessup, our neighbor, her husband had stayed all night down there, and he had left and went and hauled logs all day, and he didn't know that they had even been found till he'd come in from work that evening. And so Lillian brought us a block of chili. She made homemade chili, and she brought us a block of chili, and I bet I warmed it up 3 or 4 times before I could get it fixed right, I'd either cook it down too much or put too much water in it. And one of Jack's uncles came over there, and he seen that we was asleep, and all he did was just pull a door to and everything. So we ended up doing okay out of it, but we went back and got the boat, and we fished for the tackle, and we found everything except my rod and reel and some of the trot lines, but we got Jack's rod and reel and Anthony's rod and reel, but we didn't get mine. But I just thank God that they were okay, and Jack just knew Anthony wouldn't want to ever go fishing again, but he told him, said, son, you got to go back and do it again. So he still loves to go fishing.
Didn't y'all put a marker on that tree?
Yeah, we went out when we went and looked for the boat and everything. Well, it was standing up, nose down, and it broke a chain. The waves were so hard it broke the chain that was holding it. And I took a red reflector out there and a nail gonna drive it in that tree, and it was so easy that I could just push a nail through the tree. It was just God's will that held them up. That's all, because it was just. But anyway, I left the reflector on it. Now I don't know how long it stayed on it, but anyway.
When the boat first got swamped, he grabbed the nearest tree that was closest to him and chained the front of the boat to it, and then they climbed up in the tree. That way the boat wouldn't wash off. That's why the boat stayed at the bottom of the tree until the waves broke the chain.
Yeah, well, yeah. When they got out of the boat, well, it turned
over, yeah.
Motor down, and they followed that chain till they could get to that tree, and then whenever they did, then it broke it loose.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for sharing. Love you.
Well, that was a miserable night, but I thank God that they were okay.
It's very important not to be out on these big lakes in your boat thinking that you can beat these waves, because they can very quickly get much larger, or you can turn your boat the wrong way and catch a wave the wrong way and take on water. So just stay off the water when it's check the forecast and stay off the water when it's high wind. Bye-bye.